In a dirty, loud and cramped city, there lives a certain somebody with a dream. They spend their day at a job that allows them to live just well enough. Nighttime is spent at home until they go to bed and the cycle repeats itself. They've been doing this for years, and every day they get a little more desperate. They don't really like what they do and feel they've been wasting away their years. In their current life, they feel worthless. They could be doing so much more, but when they have free time, they are too tired and give in to short-term gratification. Society doesn't make it easier either. Your worth is measured by what you do. It's just one of the commandments society often tells them. They confide all this stress in their friends and loved ones. In turn, they tell them they are already good enough and don't need to achieve their big goals to be worth something. And so, it begins. You spend your whole time thinking about these questions that contradict each other, and you end up doing nothing at all. If you see yourself as good enough, you can become too comfortable in the awful state you're in. You not even try to pursue your very hard goals. But if you believe the things you create is what makes your existence worth it, you'll torture yourself for not doing anything meaningful with your life yet. So which one is it? Are you already worth something by just existing, or do you have to own your worth by what you do? The question of whether humans have value by just existing, what in philosophy is called intrinsic value, or if they have to own that value, is one of the great battles of humanity. Every great thinker has their opinion. It's like a route they offer so you can achieve a specific ending in the game of life. For the intrinsic value ending, here are 3 possible paths you can choose. Immanuel Kant, the yapper philosopher, believed humans have value because we are rational and moral beings. John Locke, called the father of liberalism, thought human life has value because we can decide for ourselves and have the ability for self-preservation. Thomas Aquinas, famous theologian, said that humans have value in themselves because we are created by God and have a rational soul. However, all these views have one massive problem. In my opinion, they say human life has value not because we are we and that's awesome, but because we happen to have something else that gives us value. Being rational isn't something people are born with, because there are some whose IQ is lower than my sex appeal when I start yapping about high school DxD. Acting morally isn't natural for everyone, as some people's moral compass is pretty messed up. And being created by God and having a soul isn't a default stat we were downloaded with, because what if God and the soul are things we made up to escape the scary unknowns of death? Let's see the roots for the other ending, aka value is given to humans because of what we do. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most tragic philosophers, thought that each person creates their own value through self-expression and creativity. Albert Camus, one of the most popular internet philosophers, said that life is meaningless, that existence is absurd, and we have to accept that to create our own value. William James, the dripped-out psychologist, thought that human value is shaped by our achievements, the outcomes of our actions, and how much we grow from them. Of course, there's a lot to be said about these roots. What then, Nietzsche, if a person has a white-collar job where every day is the same, but they are perfectly happy with it? What then, Camus, if a person believes in a god? Would it be better for them to reject all that, even if it leads them to a life of despair and depression? What then, James, if a person doesn't find joy in doing fun things anymore, when even falling asleep and waking up becomes an exhausting task? Oh man, this whole thing is confusing. If philosophers can't agree on which point of view is better, then what hope is there? I know, let's look at society. Maybe its views are clearer. YouTube is full of videos on how to become a high-value man, or the less known, high-value woman. Men have to be always on the grind, have their emotions under control, and have to wear a dead expression on their face. As for women, they have to be independent. They can't show too much interest in a man, but they also have to be supportive and caring. These videos are shallower than my recurring dreams of one day being lovingly held by a real woman. Becoming this ultimate life form is really hard, maybe even impossible. But these videos give you the illusion that there's a clear guide to your Sigma grind set. And what if you do start seeing progress? Well, a little progress isn't gonna cut it, is it? You will only be good enough once you are able to tell your monkey brain a loud no when it wants to watch the latest episode of Overflow. We know the cliches. You are good enough. You're perfect just the way you are. You don't need to do great things to be great. I don't think that's always a good thing to say. If your confidence level is just lower than my will to live whenever I find the crystal meth guys in Elden Ring, then yeah, it's a really powerful realization. But if you are miserable and people tell you the state you're in is good enough, how does that make you feel? I think awful. You feel trapped, like whatever you do doesn't matter because you have already achieved your final form. It's here that I will side with Nietzsche, Camus and James. You have to create your own value. The world and human life have no value in themselves. Now chill out, random Twitter user. Who says that human life has value just because it exists? It's humans themselves. But nature doesn't care. When you take a stroll outside, you don't suddenly find a tree bearing fruit of human value. Just because I say the quintessential quintuplets is a masterpiece that rivals the works of Tolkien, Plato and Takehiko Inoue, doesn't mean it's true. So the authority to tell someone they're good enough is more fragile than Asmund's ego when he has to eat food. Sometimes we daydream about a perfect version of ourselves. We can rule all over that great version of ourselves, but the problem with an ideal version is exactly that. It's an idea. An anxious person can imagine themselves standing in front of a large crowd effortlessly. But that will probably not happen. They can get better at it, but they will most likely never lose anxiety completely. If human life has no value in itself, if we can't become that ideal version of ourselves, and if good enough isn't always something we want to be, then we're cooked, right? As far as our ignorant minds understand, the universe is infinite. Of the infinite number of planets, we have only discovered over 5,000. In none have we found life. All it would have taken is for one small thing out of an infinite number of things to go differently, and we wouldn't be here right now. That's the very definition of a wonder, isn't it? And I don't care if it's a wonder of God or of luck. If there is one thing that makes life special, it's the very small likelihood of it actually happening. Does that mean we are great just because we exist? No. A wonder isn't valuable just because it exists, but rather it becomes valuable through what we do with it. Don't get me wrong, if you bet your entire life savings on green and you actually win, that's really special. But if you never do anything with that money, the outcome of it happening or not is the same. I think we should be calling existence a wonder full of potential. If somebody doesn't use their potential, then they are still a special thing. But the key lies in working towards the potential. What is this potential? How do we know where it leads us? How do you know when we have realized it? We don't. Nobody has ever known. The greats we admire didn't know they'd be remembered for what they are today. They did what they loved because it gave them purpose, not for future greatness. If we are led by just delusions of greatness, we'll be dragged around by whatever is popular right now. We'll be committing artistic unaliving. If when we're doing what we like, we feel we're not wasting our time, that means we are creating our value. We have to respect that about ourselves, because it's extremely hard to do. That's all there is to it. It's the potential of happiness, nothing more.